In this video, we're going to be looking at button or buttons, because usually you have more than one button on your page. Is your page a one button website? If so, let me know in the comment section below, because yeah, I wonder what the average number of buttons are per website. Anyways, we're going to be talking about buttons. We're going to be looking at the docs, and trust me, the docs, there's a lot to buttons. It was one of the tutorials I made where I was like, man, that's a lot of buttons. And then after that, I think I have about 4 examples for y'all. So let's make our way over to the docs and get to seeing what's going on with our button component. So the button component is used to trigger an action or event, obviously, such as submitting a form, opening a dialog, canceling an action, or performing a delete operation. I think we all know that. So we can see the imports down here. We have a button and a button group. Both of them will be covered in our coding examples. The button is a component with support for custom icons, spinners, not the ones that go in your car, but a different kind of spinner, etc. We also have a button group used to group buttons whose actions are related, with an option to flush them together. Flush is kind of a weird word, and I will say this, when you see it, how it groups it together, you'll understand. You'll be like, oh, flush, okay. It's just more of a how it stylistically makes the buttons kind of sit next to each other. So if we look at a button right here, this is pretty much it. You have a button, we could click it, nothing happens because nothing's hooked up. We have our color scheme in here. We could do customize it however we want to. We see the sizes right here. They're very easy to add. We have extra small, small, medium, and large right here. You just do size equal, and we can see that this is a large size. This is an extra small right here. And yeah, these are the 4 different sizes you could use. Although if you wanted to, you could come and do width, height, and you could even make your own custom buttons if you wanted to. So don't let the size here purely limit you. Although I would imagine 90% of use cases, you're going to use, most of these, if not most likely a medium or a small. But that's just my opinion. For the button variants here, you see that we have the solid, the outline, which is pretty understandable. We have the ghost, and then we have the link. The link has the underline, styling to it that we're used to seeing with the link. The ghost is like the outline without the outline. So I guess if you want to kind of have a button somewhere, and when you hover over it, it has that background color here. Cool. Just make sure when you're using the ghost, try not to bury it in a lot of text, because unless the user is hovering, maybe they're on a assisted reading device or a tablet, they may not get this highlight background thing. So be extra careful with the ghost one. We have a button with an icon. You can see how we have one on the left hand and the right hand side. We have a left icon, and it looks like we're dropping some icons in here. So I think that'll be interesting. And all things with Chakra, you don't have to use their icon library. You could use another icon library if you want to. And here we see another example of it. And let's go to the loading state, because I think this one is very interesting and useful. So past the isLoading prop to show its loading state, by default, the button will show a spinner and leave the button's width unchanged. You could also pass the loading text prop to show a spinner and the loading text. So think about if you have some kind of use effect hook, you're making some kind of async call, you're getting some kind of data in. Now there's things later called skeletons that, you could use for full-blown pieces of your UI, which are helpful. But this is really nice when you just kind of have a page, maybe someone just bought a pizza, right? And you're waiting to get the confirmation from the API that your money went through. Maybe you want something here that says processing payment, or just to show them that actions are taking place. I think that is pretty cool that you could just inject isLoading right here straight into your code with no extra shenanigans anywhere else. And of course, you could set this to true, you'll still get the same result, or to false, which will shut it off. So you could use state to control that. And I think that is really neat, in my opinion. You could also have these custom spinners here. I think this beat loader is a custom. And this is the thing I think Chakra gets into trouble with. is I looked everywhere for BeatLoader, and I think this is just a straight up custom example, unless I'm just an idiot, which is potentially true. And so I think this spinner right here, you could just make your own custom loader here. And it says at the top, you could change the spinner element to use custom loaders. But I think I'd have appreciated it if they actually had this BeatLoader code in this editable example. Because if you're just skimming through here, you look at the code because this pops out and then you see the result. And then because there's a zillion components, you think BeatLoader is one. Anyways, I guess it's just a minor thing. And we could have the loading text. We have it at start or at the end here. And I talk more about that later in the examples. We could have social buttons. So what's cool with the color schemes is they have the Facebook color, they have the Twitter color, they have it for WhatsApp, LinkedIn, and whatnot. And so you could pull those actual links in here or the link icons. And so you can make this look like more of an official Facebook link to go to maybe your business's account or your own personality Twitter account. And this makes the branding a lot more official looking rather than having some janky looking text that says click me to go to Twitter, right? This has a lot more presence and meaning and impact on the page. Now, grouping buttons, we've already talked about this, right? You could use the stack or button group, so it gives you two options there, to group buttons. Honestly, you could probably do more things than that to group buttons if you wanted to. It says when you use the button group component, it allows you to set the size and variant of all buttons within it. So it's kind of like the master almighty controller of all the buttons inside of here. You could add spacing between all the buttons and flush the buttons together by removing the border radius of the children as needed. And so you could see here, we're putting everything in the button group. We're slapping in the variant and all the stuff up above, and we could change it, or we change everything down below. Now, if I wanted to come in here and change the variant directly on, say, the cancel button, I could do that and it would overwrite it. But for all the other buttons, it would go by the variant outline unless I nest that specific prop inside of a button of my choosing. And so we have this right here. We have this button group. We have is attached variant outline. And it says to flush buttons past the is attached prop right here. And so we could see that these two things are being flushed right next to each other, which gives it a cool visual effect. Lastly, here it says the button has a role of button for accessibility, which is always good. We want all our users to be able to navigate our page effectively. And it says when button has focus, space or enter activates it, which is cool. And then it goes into here for more things like custom buttons, composition, things along those lines. This is really just adding more of the styling stuff that we covered in an earlier video into a button here in case you don't like anything that Chakra gives you straight out of the gate. And you can even make your own custom buttons in here because remember, like everything is a box. So you could come in here and just say this as a button. Remember that as word is very powerful. And you could come in here and make your button look like it's straight out of 1996, website. Then we have all the props in here. Be sure to come back here and check if there's any updates or anything that you may have missed to give your buttons the shine and glory that they deserve. But this has been enough talking. Let's get to the examples. In this first example with buttons and button groups, what we're going to do is just do some very, very basic things with buttons, add some spacing when we're putting in, in a stack. And then we're going to change the color scheme, talk about size and the variants. So let's go ahead and start doing that. What we see here is we have these four basic buttons. Now we have the stack layout here, and you don't need stack. I'm just doing it for visuals to just kind of show the differences between all these. So I have subscribed to my channel, which hopefully you have by now. I sincerely appreciate it if you do. We have order beer. Beer is always good. Order TP. Hopefully during the last year and a half, you haven't been low on TP. And then go to my OnlyFans. Maybe someday, I don't know. But let's go ahead and change the color schemes. Then we're gonna add some sizing and then do some variant work. So let's do the color scheme first. Now that we have these color schemes here, you can see that some of these colors really do look familiar, right? We have Twitter down here, we have LinkedIn, we have WhatsApp, and we have Facebook. You notice that I misspelled LinkedIn. Well, I capitalized the I do believe, and it just vanished, right? So that's one of the things you want to make sure when you have a color scheme, whether it's something built in or custom, you really, want to check the spelling. Otherwise, your button just might vanish into nowhere. So there's lots of different kinds of color schemes. You can see that there's, the white alpha, orange, messenger. Let's do Telegram. We see that it comes to a slightly different shade of blue right here. And as we hover over them, it still defaults to kind of what that, on hover color would be if you were actually on Facebook or Telegram or whatnot. So let's go ahead and discuss sizes, and let's go ahead and actually just apply them first, then we'll discuss them. So as this has moved down here, let me space these out because it'll be easier for everyone to see. I know for one, I don't like looking at a bunch of jammed up code unless I'm at work. So we have each of these buttons here. We have size XS, so extra small up through large here. And these are the 4 sizings that are available to you. Now I imagine you're able to customize these if you want to through your own themes and whatever you want to. But typically, if we're looking at the range from extra small to large, or in my case, this would be kind of extra large, that this is a good healthy size range when you're going from mobile to a large desktop. Now, last, let's apply the variants. So here we have solid, and let's go over this. This is, nothing's really changed, right? And so this would assume would be your default is a solid button. That's what they all were previously. If you don't believe me, just rewind the video. This one is outline. As you can see, as we hover over it, it does fill the background in with the WhatsApp low opacity kind of color here. We have ghost. So we could think of this as kind of like a regular link here, except just like the outline, when you hover over it, it kind of has that opaque, clear, but very subtle backing of color behind it. And then for an actual link, it's how a link you think would be. There's an underline when you hover the mouse over it, and when you go away, it just looks like, in this case, blue text. If I wanted to make it red, it would be red. But all these ways are the 4 various ways, I can't speak here, ways that you could style a button before you even get into customization. So let's go into the next section and look at the icons and loading state. Okay, for this one, what we're going to do is use some icons, and we're going to show you how to put icons and use them with buttons, more specifically put them inside of buttons. And then the other part of this, what we're going to do is show you how to use like a loading state. So first I have these icons up here. I am going to utilize them in just a moment. But if you go to the documentation in Chakra UI and you go to the icon section, there's an npm, I think a yarn, but I just use npm command to install these. It's a separate library. It's just as easy as installing, all these components that we're bringing on in. So let's get to coding, and let's explain these one at a time. We have this loading right here now. As you know, when I'm hovering over it, you see this denial, no can do type of state, or at least the way the icon is appearing over the button here. And so we have is loading, which is defaulting to true. We have the loading text. So if we wanted to change it, if you wanted an example, we could do loading content, and we see that it changes over here. The variant is an outline, and we have the spinner placement at the start here. And so we just have it to the left. So if we wanted to come down here and make this false, subscribe to my channel, which is perfect placement because you should be subscribed. But let's go ahead and turn this back to loading content here. Now, I want to show you something else. Now, this isn't a live demo, but not everything works as planned. So let's go ahead and work on another button that's very similar to this one. So we have left spinner example right here. And so I call it left spinner even though it's on the right. Sometimes I get my north, south, east, and west mixed up, so go easy on me here. But we have this spinner placement end here, and we have start. Obviously, they're on opposite ends. Now, when I was originally working through this, the spinner placement end, I believe it was, didn't work. It just didn't. As I typed it end, as you see right here, and after installing Chakra, I was just like, well, I guess they shipped something out that doesn't work. So what I ended up doing is I actually went back to their GitHub page, and I saw that there was a minor version of this library that was updated. And so I decided to upgrade my version to that, and it ended up fixing this. Now, there's other little weird tidbits like that I found through just going through this library. Some things don't work. You update a couple minor versions, and whammo, everything should be working fine. So this should be an example that maybe it's not just you. There are bugs out there in the world. And so maybe rather than wait for, version 4 or 5 to come out, maybe you need version 4.2 or 4.5. So always keep an eye out for those kinds of weird things here. I know that's kind of a weird diatribe, but that's an actual problem I ran into. And that's the thing with code. It's always imperfect. There's always bugs. But let's go to the next button examples here. And let's do something that's actually got a spinner on it. All right, now that I have this set up appropriately here, they have things that are icons that are also components that are visually very similar. So with our buttons down here, let me space this out. I have a button, no real difference than what we have above. Yeah, there's no is loading text, variants, color schemes. We've seen these things before. But instead of a spinner, which goes with the is loading text, we could just have an icon. So we have on the right icon here, we want a spinner going, but we have accessibility to the button to click on it. Whereas with the two previous ones where we have the is loading state, you can't really interact with them much. You just kind of sit there and wait. And so with the right icon, you're actually allowed to, maybe add something on here where it tracks how many times they've clicked, and you yell, hey man, clicking 90 times does not make the program run faster. So to show you that we could do something on the right with an icon, let's just add crap on either side. So we'll do that next. So now we can see we have on both sides, amply named here, we have this phone icon on the right, then we have this warning on the left. Now, what does this mean? I don't know. I'm not really making this for a website. I'm just making this for an example. But you can see with the right and left icon, we could slap icons on both sides. And you don't just have to use the Chakra UI icon library. You could use other third-party libraries as well. And now make sure in the documentation you don't have to handle them any differently. But these are all the ways you could add spinners, icons. Make sure, if something is loading, you are telling the audience that. So in the next section, we're actually going to look very briefly at how to group buttons together other than use them in a stack or some other kind of layout. Now let's look at how to do button groups. Now you could put buttons together any which way you want to, but let's do that specifically with the button group component. So we have this right here, and we have subscribe to my channel, buy my dog food, and cry all day long. Sometimes you have to do all three. But let's come up here and add some spacing in. So now we have a little bit more spacing. So let's do some color scheme stuff here. So we see these first two are styled, and then we have a gray one. That's fine. Let's come up here and do a variant in the button group itself. Okay, nothing changes. Let me come down here and do this. So this is an outline. Awesome. But what if I want to come up here and change it from a solid to, I don't know, a link? Let's do this. Oh, so this is actually kind of cool. So you see here, I could individually go in with the variant on a particular button, since the scope is different, and I could switch this to an outline. But if I wanted all these buttons to be roughly the same variant, right, I could go up here in button group, apply link, or whatever the heck else it is I want. It'll cascade down via the props or however it does it in the background and apply the link style or outline or whatever it is to all children in here. So yeah, that's button groups. And in the next example, let's just make a fun example once again involving my dog. So in this example, what we're going to do is make a banner-ish kind of thing. Totally not serious, and it could be probably engineered a little bit better to be flexible to different screen sizes. But we're going to make a banner with a picture of my dog and something with button groups that allows you to subscribe to his OnlyFans, or in this case, Only Puppers account, because I'm crazy. So what I learned, because this is the second time I actually had to record this, these are all of the imports you're going to be needing. So we have obviously the Chakra provider, the button group, box, HStack, circle, image, square, VStack, text. Some of these you may not need, some you may want to duplicate. I just try to do, switch these up for the bigger examples to show you just kind of all of these interacting together. I'm bringing in an image of my dog Bernie, which is right here. What is it today? This one. One of my favorite pictures ever of him. And yeah, we're going to be using useState because we're going to be switching something on and off. So let's get to coding. So we see right here is we just have that gray 300 background of the box here. We have this horizontal stack, which inside of it we have this circle, which inside of that is my dog Bernie. So let's start building more out towards the right here. It's not as responsive as I would like it to be, but when it comes to just learning this stuff, I would rather do some fun, goofy examples than make an artistic masterpiece that just probably isn't required at this point, at least when it comes to the learning how to use the library step. So let's get to doing that. Now that we have this, we have want to subscribe. I don't know why that doesn't roll off my tongue any better. Want to subscribe to my only puppers. We have sub to my only puppers, buy me treats, and then cancel right here. And actually, I should probably take off cancel just so each button visually stands out a little bit more here. And so I've already kind of explained the top here, and this is one of those things where if you're super new to this, you're like, oh, there's just so much stuff on the screen. And yes, there is. And typically, this would be broken up into different files. This is really just kind of a visual testament on how you could mix and match a lot of these components and get creative. In my case, I'm not the best stylist out there, but we have this button here, sub to my only puppers. So what this is going to do is this value right here is currently actually set to true. So let's save this. Refresh this. Okay, that's what happens sometimes. There's a disconnect between Visual Studio Code and my browser, and I don't know why. So let's come in here and set this to false. So we've already seen the is loading state when it's false, which is just an ordinary button. So when we click sub to my only puppers, let's imagine something happens where it takes, all your credit card info, and for $10 a month, you could see him, I don't know, do something hilarious because he's cute. So we click this and we see we change the state from false to true as indicated by this is loading state changing. We have buy me treats. This does nothing. As you can see, there's no on click right here. But say there was a time span where we could be like, you know what? I don't really want to watch Bernie go on walks with whoever, or play with corgis. You could cancel that, and this would set the back to false. And so this all happens in this button group right here. And the cool thing about this button group, maybe compared to other button groups out there, is you may not even tell that this is grouped together as such. It may be, some other kind of stack or other kind of like layout component you use. But this is just one of those secret little fun components that Chakra gives you to line up your buttons to make an only puppers for your dog. If you like this stuff, like, share, subscribe. I love doing this. I love reading the comments, good or bad. And hope to see you in the next video.